How come there's so much anger over wolves destroying everything and we can't have a wolf season? And you asked for statistics and facts and figures. The DNR's got all sorts of statistics, facts, and figures. I don't buy half of them. I don't believe that there's 2,700 wolves in Minnesota. I believe there's 7,500 wolves in Minnesota. I don't believe for 1 minute there's 2,700 and that number hasn't changed for 10 years. I think the DNR has a serious credibility problem. So we did 20 meetings last year, 20 meetings. The biggest one, I think, was Detroit Lakes. We had 700 people show up. People are showing up and they're livid. And the common theme was, I used to have 25 to 30 deer on my land. I haven't seen a deer in 5 years. I'm 65 years old. My granddaughter has hunted with me for 2 years. We haven't seen a deer. I haven't seen one for 5. She says she doesn't want to hunt next year because there's no deer. I won't live long enough for deer to come back on my land.
What's up, everybody? JD here. Welcome to the HUNTXP Podcast in a special 3-episode drop, mostly about wolves. So let me give you a little bit of the backstory here. We reached out to our audience for suggestions of guests. They hooked us up with a guest named Steve Porter, who's our first episode here. You might be jumping on to listen to Steve. We had this wide-ranging conversation, but we queued it up mostly to talk about wolves in Minnesota. He had a lot of other things to say, but we got into wolves and their relationship with hunters, how there's a lot of tension in Minnesota and other states. Why can't we hunt them? Why are their populations so high? That episode really sparked some curiosity, and we were like, hey, we want to hear directly from the DNR and learn more about their approach to wolves, particularly in Minnesota, but it has some translation to other states where wolves are as well. So we went and did that. And we reached out to the DNR and they connected us with Dan Stark, who's the chief large carnivore specialist for Minnesota and is directly involved in helping the rebound of the wolf population in Minnesota. And there's tons of insights that he has to offer as well. And then Johnny and I just wanted to process what we had learned from these two guests. So what you're going to receive in this 3-episode drop is a couple different perspectives on what's going on with wolves in Minnesota as it relates to hunters. Why can't we hunt them? Why can't hunting be a part of it? How much do wolves actually play in the population of whitetail or other animals in Minnesota? We're going to get into all of that. It didn't fit into one episode. We're going to hear from different voices. Here's what I'd love for you to do. If you're a hunter or someone who just cares about wildlife, listen up to all these different perspectives. And we're giving you these different perspectives so that you can be more informed in your opinion and perspective, so that you can be a more informed hunter, so you can understand wolves better. And we'd love to hear from you. So let us know what you think about this, and hopefully you learn something. Hopefully you become a better hunter. Hopefully all these conversations help you level up your hunt. Let's jump into the episode. Johnny, looking good, man, in the tiger camo.
That's right.
Yes.
Dude, it's really comfy. It's really, really comfortable.
I like that sweatshirt.
Yes.
I'm a fan of that. Yeah. Yeah. Johnny's repping the like that is like the exclusive. No one will ever get that again.
Limited edition.
Very, very limited edition tiger camo.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're joining us, we're HUNTXP. We exist as a community to level up each other's hunting game. So we interview all kinds of guests. We're on 19, as I said before. We're getting close to that barrier, man.
That mythical. Yes. So people say, right? They say that podcasts don't make it past episode 20. So we're shooting for it. And boy, we're just one away. We're just one away. And you know what?
Lost in
You
it.
surprise me all the time. I might surprise you next week because maybe we need to do something special for episode 20.
Now I can't wait.
I might not, but I might.
Surprise might be. There's no surprise. Welcome.
Correct.
Welcome to 20. Welcome. I do have a surprise for you tonight. As you can see, I'm repping Big Game Trained from our man Tyler. Tyler's just an awesome guy. He's got a sweet idea that's really valuable, especially if you're heading out west. Your body is not ready to head out west. He's your guy. If you're in the Midwest, Wisconsin, Minnesota, he's got some cool things going on over at Big Game Train. He even hooked us up with a discount for his stuff because he's so awesome. So check down in the description if you're interested in Big Game Train stuff. I think it's like $100 off some of his program. So,
dude, that's ridiculous.
What a generous guy.
Tyler. Yeah.
Speaking of generous guy, I got you a hat, Johnny. So
dude, thank you.
You're welcome. Surprise. I don't know when I'm going to see you again. Delayed gratification, but this is your hat. I'll keep the sticker on it. I ran into Tyler at the Minnesota Deer and Turkey Classic, is what it's called. And I was there, was hanging out with folks, meeting a lot of new people, and went up to Tyler's booth. If you saw him there, I'd give him a shout out. And he hooked us up with some merch. So some swag.
Awesome.
It's pretty sweet. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you.
Did you know that you can use AI to become a better hunter? Here's what you got to do. Our team at HUNTXP has built a custom AI. We call it Crockett. And it is the combination of the power of AI and the collective wisdom of hunters for many years mashed up together and put right in your pocket, right in the field where you can level up your hunting game. You can ask it things like, what's the best broadhead setup for my situation? What's the best day to hunt this week? All sorts of questions. You can take pictures of the snake you almost stepped on in South Dakota and say, is this a rattlesnake? That's something that actually happened to us. It's super fun. Our community's having a great time building this. We'd love for you to join in at huntxp.com. Join us.
Yeah, man. So it's been fun. Johnny and I are both connected to the Guard Pro trail cam that we've been on, and Johnny's he's gonna have a really short turkey season, I think, because there's some beautiful toms on that trail cam that just seems like they're just living their last few days of life out in luxury, strutting across the trail cam's view, and Johnny's just gonna pop one first morning.
You know what's cool? Well, yeah, if I get out first morning, we'll see if I take work off or not. But what's really cool is because it's been so mild, because we've had some warmer weather up here, the clover is actually starting to pop up. I walked through there the other day and I can see green popping up, and the turkey tracks and the turkey sign is everywhere. And we got the Guard Pro up. And the other day, they actually were walking through my front yard. They came out of the woods, and then they walked through my yard, and then they headed across my field. And I was like, I bet you within 15 minutes, they're going to be on that Guard Pro. And sure enough, you actually sent me the video of that tom strutting, and I was like, oh my gosh, here we go.
We'll put it on here. Yeah. Did you see the raccoon? That was kind of fun.
Last night, the raccoon just... Yeah.
This is the fun thing about cell cams. You can share them with friends, and then you can text each other like, dude, did you see that? We just talked about that with Alex 2 episodes ago about how he shot a buck on a cell cam, and his buddies were like immediately texting him. It's kind of a new fun thing.
My dad and my cousin, they're the two I give access to my cell cams up here, and they knew exactly when I shot my big 9-pointer. Text me, called me right away. But there's also a bobcat that lives back there that I get on camera every now and then, and I see tracks all the time. It's pretty good at avoiding the camera, but if we get a sweet video of that bobcat, that'd be cool. I might have to move it to try to capture him.
Dude, that'd be sick.
Yeah.
Well, Guard Pro, thanks. It's working great so far. No complaints. Really like it. We'll get you a full review eventually of the Guard Pro 60, I think it's called. So, is there anything you want to say on bringing Steve on the pod, John?
Why did you call me John?
I have no idea why I just called you John. When have I ever done that? That's like first ever in my life that I did that.
Truly.
Yes,
I do go by Johnny. The only person I ever let call me John was my college soccer coach, because I didn't want to correct him when I was a freshman, because I was nervous.
I stand corrected. Yeah.
But anyway, no. I think you summed it up. I think this is a space where we can hear from everyone, and you might hear some different viewpoints. Again, super passionate guy, and I think that's going to come out in a lot of his answers, but it's okay. And it's okay to hear from people with different perspectives. So there's some things I'm sure we can definitely gain from this conversation, and you can too.
Let's bring him on the pod, Johnny.
Let's bring him on.
Well, Steve, you're here. Thanks for joining the HUNTXP podcast. We're so glad to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
That's great. Steve, we're just getting to know you, and I'm not sure all of our audience will know. Can you give us the overview of how you spend your weeks and your days and what you're into? Who is Steve Porter?
Sure. So back in 1990, I got hired in law enforcement, and I moved out in the country, bought a little farm, had some deer. I got discouraged because little bucks would get killed by everything and get hit by cars, and they didn't mature. I talked to a local game warden. I got a license to raise deer in 1992. So I was a young deputy in 1990, got my first deer in 1992, and it was a legal enterprise in Minnesota. So I worked about 30 years in law enforcement, solved a lot of good crime, made people whole, victims, helped them out quite a bit, happily retired. My farm, my deer farm, is 32 years old. That morphed into a business. It was just a hobby. I went and bought a buck and 2 doe fawns in 1992, and my first buck was named Clyde. And I wanted to see what a big deer looked like, a mature deer. I just wanted to see one mature deer. I had no business aspirations, but my hobby turned into a business. We sell doe urine all over the country. We can't hardly keep up. Frozen doe urine. We had a live entertainment business, and I traveled to Eau Claire, Wisconsin back in 1996. It was one of the first sports shows I ever did. I brought 2 live bucks to the Holiday Inn Convention Center in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Nice.
That was the beginning of an entertainment business, to be able to tame down a live trophy buck, a big mature deer. Clyde had 18 points, and at that time scored 185 inches. So that was fun. And we started traveling to sports shows all over the country. And then I put a grant together with some outdoor groups, and we were going to go to schools and bring my bucks to schools. And for a 4-year period, I went to 100 schools with my live bucks in Wisconsin, Minnesota, probably Iowa, North Dakota. And I'd talk to almost all the kids in the schools. They'd come out. Why would we want to do that? Why would we want to bring live bucks to a school? Because we knew that kids who were involved in the great outdoors, hunting, fishing, trapping, were going to be less likely to break into a pop machine at 3 a.m. or do vandalisms or crime. Hunting's a good thing. So I went to these schools and I spoke to kids until I was blue in the face. 100 schools in just only about September of each year. So 4 years, 4 months of September, 100 schools. It was a busy time. Fun, met a lot of good people. Then the DNR started getting crazy about CWD, and they said, we're going to shut down movement. You can't bring your bucks to a show. You're going to get a ticket if you do. We're concerned about CWD. Well, they're not being honest, because we're in a USDA program. We don't have CWD, and we've never shut down the whole entire cattle industry in Minnesota because of a TB outbreak. We've never shut down the whole entire turkey industry because avian bird flu. But with deer, they said, we're shutting you guys down, forfeit all your contracts. Was successful in ultimately killing my entertainment business and robbing me of that income. That was the Minnesota DNR. And so they did an emergency rule. And the emergency rule to shut me down said that I could not travel with my deer for 30 days. Well, that's when all my shows were. I had to forfeit contracts, and they'd been booked for a year. The show promoters had done all their advertising, Facebook, radio, TV, ads. I'm supposed to be there again, but I couldn't go. So I decided to challenge them. And I said, you know what? I know the law, and I've read the law that you've passed, and it's not worth the paper it's written on. That law is illegal that you wrote up there. That emergency rule is what it was. The emergency rule said that the Commissioner of Natural Resources may control domestic animals, that in order to try to prevent spreading disease, they may control domestic animals. And then they just stuck that in emergency rule. But they were citing state statute. And the state statute they were citing they left out part of the statute. They left out the last half, and they stuck it in an emergency rule. But what did the original statute that they were citing? It said the Commissioner of Natural Resources could control domestic animals in an effort to control disease that have been turned loose, set free, or were running at large. They forgot that key part at the end.
I see.
There was nothing about my deer being turned loose, set free, or running at large. They're well under control in a trailer in a USDA program, clean and healthy, and off we go. So I challenged them, and I said, I'll see you at the sports show, and I'll take your ticket. And you guys are going to give me full subpoena power to go to court and challenge you in court with 30 years of law enforcement? You're going to have to take the witness stand in front of the media and answer all my questions? Sign me up. I'll meet you at the show. Give me my ticket. This is awesome. So I go to the show and I get my ticket, and it goes to the city of St. Paul, and the city of St. Paul attorney dismisses it. Dismissed. There's nothing here. It's a fraudulent emergency rule.
Wow.
The DNR was so mad, they took that ticket that was dismissed by St. Paul, they reintroduced it in Ramsey County. And I get a notice that I got to appear in court in Ramsey County on the same ticket that was already dismissed. I fight it. My attorney calls me up, and he says, hey, I think, we could end up losing this one. We could lose it. I said, I don't think so, but tell them that I'll plead guilty if they promise to give me 30 days in jail. I want 30 days in jail. I want my kids to know that I fought for my farm and my business. And lo and behold, the Ramsey County attorney dismissed it as well.
Wow.
So I won, right? I didn't win anything. Bob Meyer with the DNR, he told me, Steve, I know you've been harmed financially. I know we've hurt you. You can go to the Joint House and Senate Committee on Claims. If you've been damaged, they can pay you. I encourage you to go. So I fill out a deal that I've been harmed. And 2 years later, I go in front of the claims committee. Bob shows up with an attorney and says, I recommend you deny his claim. So,
dude.
Yeah. So my entertainment business is long dead because they did another 30-day ban. Then they did an 18-month ban, and they wanted me to challenge them every time I went to a sports show, even though I won. And they're shutting down clean, healthy farms. Now, people will say, yeah, but deer farms have had CWD, so we're just trying to protect the wild deer. That's a common argument, right? We're just trying to protect the wild deer. Come on, you got to understand. Well, here's what I want to explain. If we have a turkey farm and it gets avian bird flu, we go in and they kill off those turkeys on that specific farm when it catches the disease. They don't shut down every turkey farm in the state and say, no more turkeys in Minnesota. It's going to geese, and it's going to fox, and it's going to other stuff. We got to shut down all the turkey farms. But with the deer, they said, we're going to shut down all the healthy farms too. We're not just going to shut down a deer farm that had disease. And the next thing a viewer might think is, well, I know it did show up on deer farms in Minnesota, so they were a problem. They were a cause. Well, deer farms test 100% of their animals. Well, deer test maybe 0.1%. They don't test. And then when we're testing 100% and it shows up on a farm, they go, aha. The deer farm caused CWD, and it spread to the wild. That's not so, because there's federal epidemiology reports that say where the CWD came from or not, and most of the time it naturally occurred from the landscape, and the farm deer caught it. It was there in the soil anyway. So anyway, now fast forward, I'm in a federal lawsuit. There's a bunch of us, and I think it's looking pretty good to sue the state of Minnesota. What they're doing, it's a regulatory taking, in my opinion, of our farms. So we had to opt. I wanted to sue in federal court. And so that's where we are. We're going to end up in District 8 federal court.
I got to interject one thing here, Steve, because I'm gathering two things. The first, you better know your stuff if you're going to go at Steve Porter. But two, I was at the convention center in 1996 in Eau Claire,
no way,
Wisconsin. I was just when you said that at the Holiday Inn Convention Center, I was like 8 years old, and I was with my dad. And I remember going to that show, and I remember a live deer, which now I know whose it was. But I also remember you could collect all these. They were like trading cards, like they had like the hole in the horn buck and all these famous bucks on them. And I remember coming home with a book with all these trading cards of these famous white-tailed deer. Dude, I was at the same place you were in 1996. Small world.
So were you there with your dad, your grandpa, your uncle? I mean,
My dad.
Okay, because there was a boy there at that show about 8 years old. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget this.
Oh.
It might have been you, it might not have been, but he came in with his dad, and then we charged $1 to see the deer. We had that's the way it was, so we could make our money. And pretty soon a guy comes with the same boy and he says, yeah, I got to bring my grandson in. Here's another $1. Well, after about the 10th time, I realized, it's just different people. Quit charging them. At the very end of the show, the little boy comes up to say goodbye to the bucks. And he was about 6, 7, 8 years old. And he turns to his dad and he says, I know that bucks don't cry, but I know sometimes little boys do.
Oh.
They turned around with tears running down his eye and left.
Wow.
Well, that wasn't me, but I would love it if it was. That would have been an amazing story.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
That was Eau Claire in 1996.
But I was there. I was at the show. So that's awesome.
Who are we hurting by bringing bucks to a show? Who are we hurting?
I don't know.
Nobody.
Not little boys, that's for sure.
No, and it plants a spark, and people want to go hunt, and they want to get motivated. They want to get outside, and they want to plant food plots, and it's just a good, enthusiastic thing. And the last thing I'm going to say about this little topic of my farm is we've been genetically breeding to beat CWD, and there is genetic resistance. So with sheep and scrapie, they were able to breed scrapie right out of sheep and have it manageable, okay? If you look at scrapie and CWD side by side, and a scientist is studying them both, you can't tell them apart. So deer have what they call CWD, but I don't know that it was ever really CWD. I'm not sure it's not scrapie. And we beat scrapie in sheep by finding genetic markers that were resistant. In deer, Greg Fleece in Wisconsin at Wilderness Whitetails had a positive preserve, but it's all over in Wisconsin. The state said, you can keep raising deer. You got CWD. It's all over in the wild. Just don't sell them off your farms. Sucks to be you. You got CWD. He switches over his genetic markers by sending it a little tissue sample from the ear, a little punch, put it in formaldehyde, send it into the lab, and they're looking for an S or an HH or an HS marker at 96 codone. That Greg was having 50% of the deer being butchered off his property being positive with CWD. He switched over all his genetic markers, and lo and behold, he hasn't had a case of CWD in about 2 years now. So deer farms have the answer to CWD, and Minnesota wants me to kill them off. Meanwhile, in Oklahoma, they passed a law in Oklahoma, that you can turn deer farm deer loose into the wild if they're in a USDA program. I am. And if they have an SS marker at the 96 codone, turn them loose in the wild. We're going to stock genetics that'll beat CWD in Oklahoma. Wow. I have the exact same deer, and Minnesota saying we're going to pressure you to kill them off.
So, Steve, can I ask you? There's a lot there. You're embroiled in some serious stuff.
Yeah.
But I think where my mind goes is, okay, let's presume there's politics at play here. There's clearly people who don't want you to do what you do.
Yep.
And they are employing tactics that may be a little shady in your perspective.
Yep.
To put it lightly.
Yep.
But they carry with them a sentiment from the public about what you do, some of the public. And so I would love for you to speak to someone from Minneapolis or someone who doesn't understand what you do.
Right.
And is maybe, at a coffee shop or getting a cocktail with one of these people who have a negative opinion about your operation. And what would you, if you sat down with them, what would you say? Like, hey, I think you perceive what I do this way, but it's actually this way. I think there's been hints of that in what you've said. Yeah. But if you could focus on like one or two ways that you feel like you're perceived from the people who are trying to shut you down, and how that's a misunderstanding of what you are or what you're up to.
Yep.
Give us that. I think that'd be really interesting.
Okay. So here I am. Minnesota created a pathway for me to raise deer. They made it legal. And I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And I invested a lot of money, and I'm making a living, and I'm paying taxes, and the world goes round. And so all of a sudden someone says, hold on, I don't like what you're doing up there. I don't like that you're having hunts. You can't be having hunts on your property. That's bad. Hunts are bad. Well, I have as many hunts as I can possibly produce every year, and I have to shut my phone off because there's more people that want to come and hunt. But people say, well, I don't like what you're doing. Well, that's too bad. It's legal until it's not legal. Now they're making it illegal. But like I said before, the state of Minnesota can ultimately make everything I do illegal. They can do that. But the Constitution, for me, if you're going to seize his stuff, you're going to seize his property, you got to give him due process. And that involves a payment. You got to buy. You can't just kill his farm, kill off what he's doing. So this little thing we call the Constitution, I stand up for it because in my family tree somewhere, there were young 17, 18-year-old boys who gave their life with a gun in their hand, musket probably, fighting in a trench for the U.S. Constitution. And if it means something to me, then I have to stand up and fight for it. And so other people say, well, I don't like deer farms. I never have liked them. Okay, well, I don't like attorneys. So maybe we should outlaw all attorneys, right? We're just going to, no more attorneys. We voted on it. Attorneys are done. Can we do that? So, you know what? We can say, somebody else can say, well, I love trees and I think we need more trees. And I think harvesting timber is bad. And I think we should outlaw timber harvesting because it's just, we're wrecking the forests. Wait a minute. You're living in a house built out of wood. What are you talking about? My deer farm, some people don't like it. I don't care. Some people don't like pipelines. But should we shut down all the pipelines? It doesn't make much sense, does it? How about wolves? We're going to talk about next. The majority of people in the Twin Cities love wolves, so I have to have their love affair of wolves spill over onto my deer hunting land that I bought to hunt deer on for my wife and kids and grandkids to hunt on, and I have to live with their wolves on my land, killing everything I hold dear? What happened to my rights? Minnesota has a constitution. Minnesota Constitution says they will protect hunting and fishing for future generations in Minnesota. We have a Minnesota constitutional right to protect hunting and fishing in Minnesota. But when it comes under attack by someone who maybe doesn't like deer farms and someone who doesn't maybe like deer hunting and they love wolves, we let all the deer get destroyed in northern Minnesota.
Can you talk a little bit about, you're bringing up the wolf topic, which is a good segue into that. Can you talk about, so you speak on this often, can you talk about some of the statistics or numbers? People like that, right? They like, to hear deer population things related to wolves or whatever. Do you have some of those statistics you could share?
Well, so statistics are one thing, and I don't memorize all the statistics, but what I can tell you is for me, my son Dylan and his buddy Kyle Weber, also from Wisconsin, they decided, hey, let's start a new hunting club. So they started this club about 1.5 years ago before deer season. It worked on it for 6-8 months, a 501 something or other. And they got this thing going. And I said, you got to launch it right before deer season. People are going to come out of the land after hunting and they are going to be livid because they're going to see nothing but wolf tracks in many parts of the state. They launched their club and we did some videos on my Facebook site. I got like 60,000 followers. And people were livid, and they were asking questions about this club called Hunters for Hunters. Can you come to Squaw Lake and talk about wolf damage and wolves and what we can do? Sure. So my son volunteers me to speak, and I go to Squaw Lake, and we speak about wolves. We had, 400 people show up at the first event, mad, angry, pissed off. And we had senators and representatives and congressmen, county commissioners, people are showing up. How come there's so much anger over wolves destroying everything and we can't have a wolf season? And so here's the difference. You asked for statistics and facts and figures. The DNR's got all sorts of statistics, facts, and figures. I don't buy half of them. I don't believe that there's 2,700 wolves in Minnesota. I believe there's 7,500 wolves in Minnesota. I don't believe for 1 minute there's 2,700 and that number hasn't changed for 10 years. I think the DNR has a serious credibility problem. So we did 20 meetings last year, 20 meetings. The biggest one, I think, was Detroit Lakes. We had 700 people show up. People are showing up and they're livid. And I'm going to tell you, I don't have statistics and wrongful numbers as generated by the DNR. What I have is people with credibility living on the land. And they're telling us with credibility, this is what's happening. In Aurora, Minnesota, we had 600 people show up. And the common theme was, I used to have 25 to 30 deer on my land. I haven't seen a deer in 5 years. I'm 65 years old. My granddaughter has hunted with me for 2 years. We haven't seen a deer. I haven't seen one for 5. She says she doesn't want to hunt next year because there's no deer. I won't live long enough for deer to come back on my land. I'm not going to live long enough. That's a common theme. So people will tell you, the Minnesota DNR, boy, they're sure making a big mistake with this wolf problem. Really? They're making a big mistake? Nobody knows that the wolves are destroying the deer herd? It's a secret to them? I don't think that's the case. I don't think it is a mistake. Well, you're saying it's on purpose? I had Senator Nathan Wiesenberg ask Sarah Stroman, the commissioner of the DNR, because they say, golly gee shucks, wolves are protected at the federal level. There's nothing we can do in Minnesota. There's nothing we can do. Wolves are protected. We got to just live with them. Sarah Stroman, if that's your position, that you can't do anything, then just put in writing on your DNR letterhead, put it in writing that the state of Minnesota is ready for wolves to be delisted, and we're ready to manage them. The Endangered Species Act calls for 12 to 1,400. We've exceeded that. We're sitting at what we say is 2,700. The people in Northland will say 7,500. We can afford to have a season. We want them delisted. Sarah Stroman, put it in writing that the state of Minnesota, their official position is they want them to be delisted. And I'll take that piece of paper and I'll go to my congressman and we'll get them delisted. You know what Sarah Stroman told Nathan Wiesenberg? Yeah, no, we're not going to do that. Oh, you're not going to even make a statement for it. We put on 20 meetings. We raised so much heck. We had a U.S. congressional hearing in Minnesota last maybe March. A U.S. congressional hearing on wolves. Congresswoman Harriet Hagman came. It was a thing of beauty, you guys. We made so much noise. We had a congressional hearing. And there was one empty chair in the room with a name tag. You know what that name was? Sarah Stroman with the Minnesota DNR. She was so busy she couldn't come to a U.S. congressional hearing about wolves. But when we tell her there's a wolf problem, you know what she says? There's nothing we can do. They're federally protected. Well, the feds are here having a meeting trying to figure out what we're going to do with wolves, and you can't come because you're too busy. So she said she had a scheduling conflict. Must have been something pretty important. Couldn't come to a congressional hearing. You're the head of the DNR. So we did a data request on her schedule. I wonder what she was busy with. She had a meeting with Ron Shera, a TV personality down in the cities at about 9 or 10 o'clock that morning. So she couldn't make it because a local TV personality needed to visit with her for a while. That was more important than a congressional hearing on wolf damage in Minnesota.
So, Steve, I'm curious, what I hear you saying is that people just generationally have seen a decline, mostly in northern Minnesota. I have heard the stat as well, the 2,700 wolves, and you're saying it's probably double, triple that.
Triple.
And so the DNR, often what they say is there's a combination of factors that contribute to the decline of deer numbers. One of them being habitat. Either it gets overgrazed and then the deer population plummets, or hard winters. So what would you say? They would say that in combination with predation is the reason for the decline in deer population. What do you say to those two other factors, like harsh winters?
Yeah.
And
so
over.
Yeah. So people want to say habitat. Can I tell you something? I live on the edge of a 2,000-acre woods, and they come in and log it every so often, different parts of it. The big trees with the canopy up on top, they get taken out and the new brush shoots up, and the deer have all the twigs and browse in the world to eat. And so I will tell you that in my strong opinion, habitat loss is a big scam. What the DNR is saying is, well, the deer numbers are down, but it's not just wolves, it's habitat loss. But if you give us more money, we can fix the habitat loss. How much money do you want to give us? Well, that's a bunch of nonsense. Absolute bunch of nonsense. So then they say, oh, it's hard winters. Deer have had hard winters forever. But let me tell you something. Many, many years ago, the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association was not headed up by environmentalists. At that time, it was a conservationists. And they took a starving deer from northern Minnesota and they drove it down to the capital. These were men of resolve. And they were mad that the deer were starving in a bad, bad winter. And they lobbied for a bill to be passed that would put 50 cents on every license into a feeding the deer fund. So we sell, I don't know, $400,000 or $500,000 500,000 licenses a year. And so 250,000, maybe, let's guess, it goes into a fund to feed deer when it's starving. But if you Google the Minnesota DNR, when that law passed, it says Minnesota DNR is a reluctant partner in emergency winter feeding. But where did the money go? It went to the DNR, and it had an ear tag on it, and it had to go for emergency winter feeding. But the DNR didn't like that. They don't want people feeding deer. So the reluctant partner came up with what was called the Winter Severity Index. You had to have so many days of 10 inches of snow, a foot of snow, 16 inches. It was a point system. So many days below 10 below zero, 20 below zero, 30 below zero. And if you met all the criteria and it was just about where they're going to starve to death, we'll release the funds and people can buy feed and go feed their starving deer on their land. I think they've done it one time.
Wow.
In about 30 years, maybe 40. So every year, the Minnesota DNR is still taking in this 50 cents. Where's the money going? Well, they went back into the legislature and said, we don't like this law. Could we just, if we don't spend the money, let's just not let it sit there and accumulate to millions and millions of dollars in case they're starving, because we created a winter severity index. So it's almost impossible to ever have to feed. We'd rather let them starve instead of spend this money. So they added language to the bill that says that they can use it for, I think, CWD research, which is very vague. And CWD research might mean a new pickup for someone as they're driving around collecting brain stems from someone. So if we're going to sit here and say it's habitat and deep winters and starving, the sportsmen are paying to feed the starving deer and we don't use the money. So knock it off, Minnesota DNR. Anyway, I went on a little rant there, but that's it. So when you guys hear this new...
That's a little one?
What do you think? It's absurd.
Yeah, so that's what I want to get to. Like, let's imagine a world where the noise you all are making makes an impact and hunters get an opportunity to voice solutions. What are you hearing from people on what the solutions are? Obviously, there's hunting. Wisconsin has opened a season. So there was a brief season a couple years ago in Wisconsin.
Correct.
And Johnny's talked about that before on this pod, how it
was done.
They met
24 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So
that's an indicator that the numbers we might be seeing might be a little off if we're filling all the tags within 24 hours.
Correct. Yeah. And if the president signs an executive order, then they pass it into law. So I believe that the Pet and Livestock Safety Act at the federal level will pass. I think that the law is going to pass this time around, and I think we'll see it pass somewhere around maybe August. I don't know when for sure, but they're going to be delisted.
So you think
they're going to be
part
delisted.
of the solution is from the federal level to release the option for a season? But then would each state have to choose that individually, or would that be a federal mandate?
No. So good question. So they're going to be, so remember now, Sarah Stroman's saying, Bob Meyer, there's nothing we can do. They're federally protected. We can't do anything. We're in a state. But if you go through the port of entry with marijuana at customs, they're going to pull you over. It's federal. You can't do it. You can't come into the country with pot. Okay. But in Minnesota, Tim Walz legalized pot in lieu of federal protections and federal laws. So when pot was important for our kids to get pot, that's fine. We'll legalize a small amount in Minnesota. But with wolves, well, they're federally protected. But there's a federal law against pot too. You see what I'm saying? So they're kind of picking which battles they want, and they don't want the wolf battle. So the state of Minnesota doesn't want the wolf battle. So I think they're going to be removed from federal protection by law. And then Minnesota can say, we're going to have a wolf season or not. Wisconsin, we're going to have a wolf season or not. I do think there are bills coming forward to have a wolf season. Some are good, some are bad. I've looked at some, I've made tweaks, I've made changes, I've sent them back to senators and reps. And there's some laws that are bad and some laws that are good. And now, will they pass one? So politics. Tim Walz, I think, wants to run for president. I don't think Tim Walz wants this wolf thing haunting him if that's true. And I think he's got some people mad at him for the wolves that are closer to him than I am, let's say. So I think Tim Walz is going to want to finally have a wolf season. I think he wants to spin it, and he's going to say, we gave you a wolf season as soon as they were delisted, and we passed a law, and we gave you a wolf season right away. It was the federal government that made all your land have no deer on it. It wasn't us. So as soon as they're delisted, I think Minnesota might have a wolf season. How consequential? I don't know if they'll shoot 50 wolves or not, or 100, but how many should be shot? A lot.
A lot.
So people, their deer are gone, and people will stand up and say, but when cattle get eaten, then they get paid. And that's the way it should be. So if you lose a calf to a wolf, you're going to get compensated. And we have USDA trappers going out and trapping for them. Yep, they're probably doing a good job getting rid of nuisance wolves. I've been hard on the USDA. Why? And I don't like a state agency taking the place of hunters.
Sure.
I don't like a government employee. I mean, I would rather see someone harvest a wolf and get a full body mount and put the wolf in their den. The USDA goes out and traps it. He gets paid by the hour to trap wolves all year long. And when he catches a wolf, he catches it in maybe June or July or August. The hair's no good. He throws it out in the woods to rot somewhere. I'd rather see a sportsman put the hide on his wall and have a good memory with his kid. So I don't like federal trappers replacing sportsmen. I'm not for that. I'm not telling you the federal trappers haven't done a good job in some situations. I think they have. But I don't like them replacing sportsmen, okay? And the cattle farmers are not getting compensated like they say. There was a guy, I think his name is Dale Benson, down by somewhere south of me. I guess that's the whole state. I think his name is Dale Benson. He had 3 wolves trapped in his cattle pasture. He turned all his calves out in a pasture, 100 head, whatever. And lo and behold, he finds a piece of a calf. He gets a federal trapper out there, verify it was a wolf that ate it. He puts in a claim. He gets paid for 1 calf. Then they put traps out there and catch 3 wolves in his cattle pasture. Okay, great. 3 wolves. That fall, he rounds up his calves and his cows. He's missing 9 more calves. They're just simply gone. Well, that same time, they caught 3 wolves in his pasture. He doesn't get paid for the 9 missing calves. He asked me, what can I do? I said, go in and talk to your sheriff. The sheriff writes a letter that says it was most likely wolves that ate these 9 calves. I reviewed his inventory. This is the date and time he turned the calves out. Here's their tag numbers. They're missing. He's credible. I recommend payment. And the state of Minnesota denies him payment. You're not getting paid for missing calves. We don't care how many wolves we caught in your pasture. You're not getting paid. It's ridiculous, you guys. Anyway, I'm going off. Questions? What are you thinking?
I got a couple more questions. I'm super curious about, I think you addressed this a little bit, but would you have anything to say? I mean, like, I grew up thinking about game farms as like this kind of like cheating, honestly. So what do you say to that common question of like, you're just growing the deer and shooting them, to like, I mean, like the general tone amongst like public land hunters and stuff like that is like, I don't know about that, or it's just completely different. What's your response to that?
Right. So
someone who's grown deer.
If people want to say it's cheating, okay, I'm not going to tell you that it's the hardest hunt in the world and it's impossible and all this other stuff. But then I got questions for you. So you're basically saying fair chase, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if fair chase is the concept, then I have questions about, should we have a limit on the size of gravel pit or lake that we can stock fish in? Because up here we have gravel pits that are about 3 acres and they stock them with walleye. And then they go out there and there's not enough minnows and they just wait and then they go out there and they're catching nice, big, fat walleye that are 50, 60 feet deep gravel pits. So maybe we should have a law that says, a lake's got to be so big before we stock it with walleye. And South Dakota should probably stop stocking pheasant chicks because they release hundreds of thousands of pheasant chicks across South Dakota annually. And it's big business because they come in there. My deer farm business has exploded through the roof with traffic. Why? Not because we grow nice bucks, because the Minnesota DNR is inept at allowing people to have deer on their land. And people are like, you know what? I'm never going to see a nice deer ever. I bought 200 acres, 300 acres. It's never going to happen. I'm not going to see a deer. I just want to take my grandkid out and go shoot a deer. And somehow that became evil. And so if we're going to continue talking about fair chase, then I should ask you guys this question. How many cell cams do you each have?
Currently testing one right now.
Yeah. So maybe we should outlaw cell cams because you know every step that buck takes. I don't think you should have a cell cam. Your heated stands got to go. We got to get rid of the heated stands and your food plots. You're fertilizing your food plots. You've got all the deer coming in. You're taking pictures of them morning, noon, and night. And your rifle is a 300 Winchester mag that you can shoot up to 1,000 yards with a 30 power scope. So we can have vision all we want, and we can have bow hunters, traditional versus compound versus crossbows, and we can all fight and hate each other. But that's what they want. So if I get a guy that comes on my land, and it's a legal enterprise that I started back in 1992, it's nobody's business whether they think it's cheating or good or bad or indifferent. It doesn't matter what they think, because then I can start complaining about cell cams and food plots and rifles and heated stands, and I can complain about all that stuff too. But people would say, "Wow, you shouldn't say anything about that." Well, I'm just saying.
There's something else that piqued my interest. You said you sell a ton of doe urine. Who are you selling that to, if you can disclose it? And then I'm super intrigued, like, bring us through the process from your farm, because I'm assuming it's being created into scent for hunters, or what is the purpose for it?
Yeah.
So walk us through it. I just use the stuff sometimes with success, sometimes with not. So give us the rundown of that process from your perspective, and then what to look out for, even for consumers.
Yeah.
Because you're at the beginning of the train. What should we look out for if we're going to buy a doe scent and want to get a good one?
Yeah. So here's the deal. When I first started raising deer, I was an avid bow hunter. I probably shot 100 deer with my bow throughout my life. Loved bow hunting. Okay. And I would try every little gimmick on the market, and to little or no success. I tried every type of scent, and I'd buy a 1 ounce bottle of urine, and I'd put 1 drop on a twig or a cotton ball, and I'd say, work your magic. But it wasn't enough. And then I noticed it smelled sharp, and it burnt my nose. So urine sitting on a store shelf has a tendency to turn into ammonia. So they put preservatives in it. They might put alcohol, but it ends up being sharp. And so I couldn't get any of that stuff to work with any consistency. Most of the time it alarmed the deer, and they ran away more than anything. So then I had my deer that I was raising, and I noticed the bucks would do something called a flaming curl. They'd curl their upper lip, and they'd inhale, and they're looking for pheromones. Well, pheromones are a living response in the buck, okay? And he can tell when she's going to need to be bred based on the smell of pheromones. But if you collect doe and heat urine, like the bottles say in the store, it says doe and heat collected during the peak of rut. Collected during the peak of rut? What, you're collecting off 50 does and one of them came into heat, so all your urine's collected during the peak of rut, and pheromones don't live in a bottle. They only live outside the body for a little time, and they're dead. So it's a big scam, in my opinion. So I couldn't get anything to work, and then I had a doe that I was raising, and she was somewhat tame. I bottle fed her. And I followed her one day, and I got her up, and I had a gallon pail on a 10-foot stick. She stood up and she squatted, and I shoved the gallon pail under her behind, and I caught 4 cups of urine. And I went out and I sprayed doe urine all over in the woods, and it was a miracle. It was absolutely magical. And I'm like, what is going on? It was fresh. It smelled sweet. And it didn't smell like ammonia. And I had bucks and does coming, and I'd have does come through the woods, and they'd bed down within 50 yards of me and stay there and circle and sniff all over the place. Why were does so in love with the doe urine? I went to a sports show, and I brought 2 gallons with. I had my bucks on display. And I said, I got 2 gallons of doe urine. If you guys want to try it, deer season's in a week. They'd go in the store, buy a bottle of water, dump it out, and I'd pour 12 ounces in a bottle for them and sell it for $20. My urine business was born. And people started saying, we're seeing does being so fascinated with the doe urine. Why are the doe urines Why are the does so fascinated? And here's why. Because when I feed my deer corn and soybeans and good alfalfa, those food compounds are in the urine, and the deer can smell corn and soybeans and alfalfa present in the urine. But if I take that same bottle of urine and let it sit out for 30 days, it's going to smell like ammonia, and they can't identify any food sources. So when the doe comes through the woods and smells that doe urine, she's like, where's that doe getting corn and soybeans and alfalfa? She sounds pretty intriguing to me. I'm going to find her, follow her, and go to the food source. Because they can identify the food source, right?
Yeah. Interesting.
So when we collect the doe urine, we freeze it. As soon as we collect it, we keep it frozen. Now, all of a sudden, the last part is, you guys have both seen this. If you've hunted at all, you've seen a buck running through the woods, chasing a doe. He's squatting down, kind of doing a shuffle with his shoulders, neck outstretched above the ground. And the doe's running ahead of him. She's kind of doing a little short dance too. She's squatted down, hustling through the woods. But it's not an all-out run. She could run faster to get away. He could run faster to catch her. He's grunt, grunt, grunt. Why aren't they running faster? If she really wants to get away, why doesn't she run faster? When the buck's grunting, he says something. He's saying to the doe, slow down, pee on the ground, or I'm going to hound you forever. And as soon as that doe stops to pee, because she heard him, she'll squat and pee. He stops 30 yards back and lets her go pee. Then she'll run ahead 30 yards. He'll run up right to where she went pee, stick his nose in that puddle of urine, inhale deeply, curl his upper lip, checking for living pheromones, because he didn't know her heat cycle up to that point. Living pheromones were either secreted or they weren't. If they weren't secreted, he's going to go find another doe. And if they were secreted, he's going to stay on that doe. Living pheromones are detected deep up inside his nasal passage. It's a living process. So that when we sell doe urine, it's frozen doe urine. There are no pheromones. It's not in heat. There's no such thing as doe in heat in a bottle. Pheromones don't live in a bottle, but we're telling people to spray out a lot of fresh doe urine that smells like a real doe. And when the buck smells that in the rut, he has to get closer to find out if there's pheromones present, and he will come in. And so how do we sell it? U.S. mail. It's as much as we can produce, as fast as we can produce. And we shut our website off, and we're done for the year because we can't keep up.
Wow.
8-ounce bottle, I think, for $30 at porterwhitetail.com. Porter whitetail.com.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Thanks for breaking that down. Yeah. That's interesting. So like, you're just like, this is not doe and heat. This is just doe, and it's authentic, and the buck's going to come to you because he's got to come check out if it has pheromones. Correct. It doesn't, but he's got to come in. When he does, then you get him.
You get your chance. Basically. I've had people tell me, I had guys tell me, we sprayed a rag down, Steve, and we drug it behind our ATV across the field. I put it 30 yards in front of me. I have bucks walking back and forth on that line. I've had other guys tell me I drug it to my stand. I was climbing up there, and I got 3 steps up. I turned, there was a buck on the way to the stand. A doe will rub her back legs together, okay? And she'll on her back knees. You've seen it. I've seen it. I got videos of it. When she walks through the grass, her tufts on her inside of her legs are dragging on all the grass. She's leaving a scent trail everywhere she goes. And she's doing it on purpose because she's a social animal. And so she's leaving a trail for her fawns to find, maybe her daughter from the year before in the same family unit, and of course, bucks. So we go out and we tell people, take your 8-ounce bottle of doe urine and put it in a 16-ounce spray bottle, add 8 ounces of water. You add 8 ounces of water, spray it around like a drunken sailor, keep the area stinking pretty. When you go in the woods and you got a 16-ounce spray bottle filled up, ready to rock, you're not putting one drop on a leaf anymore. You're making the area stink, and the deer are searching. The buck's going to lose 40 pounds looking for a doe. All of his fat's going to get melted off, and he's following his nose. Give him something to look for. And then the groups that buy it, we sell cases of 20 bottles. People call up, our whole entire family wants to use it, our group. I need 20 bottles shipped out. You know what I mean? So word of mouth is selling this more than anything, but it's got to be frozen as soon as it's collected. And then we do it. So now we've got a building with 15 stalls that can run the does in, and they pee, and it goes through a grate and it hits the floor. Some people say, well, I don't like deer farms. Well, but they've used doe urine. Well, where does it come from? It had to come from a deer farm.
Yeah. Steve, thanks for your time, man. I've got one more question for you.
Sure thing.
As a closer here. I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, with all of your knowledge as a hunter in the field and growing deer, what are like one or two things that you hear out in the broader hunting community or people on podcasts like this say about deer, or that are essential to do as a hunter, that you just look at and go, yeah, no way. Like that doesn't matter at all, or that's not what I see in the woods or on my farm. What are the things that are being pushed or said out there that are just not a thing
So
for hunting?
I mean, there's 50 things. Let me just pick one. So to me, the biggest thing that a guy can do, and people say, well, I smell like this, that, or the other thing, and it never impacts my hunting. Yeah, okay, good for you. But to me, you got scent. You got to control your scent. You got to wash everything. And people say, well, I don't worry about it. Well, okay, I guess flukes do happen. But if you're seriously going to go out and try to target a nice buck, you got to wash all your clothes in the scent killing stuff. I use a third of a box of baking soda and I hang everything out, and then I go get after it. The scent is a really big deal. Okay. And so that's one thing that people are very negligent on. I've had guys on my farm and they've come and hunt and I can't get a deer to even step out in the field. And one time, and I tell them and I send them letters, just no cologne. If a woman uses fruity herbal essence shampoo, you can't use that for like 4 days before you come. You got to use the scent killing shampoo. And all of a sudden I can just tell they didn't follow directions, and my deer none of them are going to step out, and we're going to have trouble, and my deer in a controlled environment, they're not going to step out, so much more for the wild. So one more fun thing I'm going to tell you real quick here. My phone blows up, you guys. Here's my number. I'll give it 520-180. People call me all the time and say, Steve, I'm having a problem. What do you recommend I do? I had several people call me and they said, Steve, I got a ticket for mowing my corn food plot. I mowed some shooting lanes in it and they charged me with baiting deer. And I said, well, what happened? I mowed some shooting lanes and the game warden come out and he showed me the statute under subdivision A, and it says bait is defined as hay, fruit, corn, nuts, anything that can attract deer. And you can't scatter bait or concentrate bait. And I mowed my cornfield, and he said, well, you did scatter corn. You're guilty. And I said, you're not guilty. He said, but the law says, I read it, Steve. The law says bait is corn, fruit, hay, nuts, anything that will attract deer. That's bait. And you can't scatter bait. And I did mow it. I said, what happens to you? I'm going to lose my gun. Lost my deer, have a big fine, can't hunt for 3 years. Craziness. And I said, you never broke the law. Yes, I did. The game warden said I did. So another guy calls me, and another guy. I got 4 or 5 phone calls over a couple-year period, and I'm mad. Subdivision A is what they're reading. Subdivision B is very clear. It says wildlife food plots, orchard management, other things. It lists about 4 things. And wildlife food plots are not bait. So what can't you do in subdivision A? You can't spread bait and scatter bait. What does B say? Wildlife food plots are not bait. You planted 3 acres for the deer. That's a wildlife food plot. It's not bait. You can mow a shooting lane through it. So people are arguing with me. The game wardens are writing tickets that aren't even against the law. They're not even against the law. So this year I decided I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to show people that it's not against the law. So opening morning of deer season, I had 4 acres of corn in front of me, and I had mowed 13 rows through the corn. And from my tree stand, I filmed the video, and I said, hey, everybody, I'm out here hunting my corn food plot. I've got these nice mowed lanes, and I have a problem. There's so much corn on the ground, and the sun's hitting and it's reflecting in my eyes. I can't see through my scope very good. I need a better quality scope because the glare on the corn is so thick. Does anybody know of a better scope I can use? Well, I blew up the internet. And people are like, you broke the law. You can't mow your corn. People get tickets for that. They're going to seize your deer. One guy messages me, said, I sent your video to my game board, and he said, you're 100% illegal. I said, tell him he's wrong. Tell him it's 100% legal. Give him my phone number. I'm in section 23 of Jupiter Township. Have him come write me a ticket. Guess how many phone calls I got from game wardens? Not one.
Wow.
Because they're hyper zealous. They don't have enough to do. The law is very clearly written. Wildlife food plots are not bait. What can't you do? You can't scatter bait. Okay, I guess I'm good to go. And people say, well, you found a loophole. That's not a loophole. That's the law. The game wardens are enforcing something that wasn't even against the law. And people were so dumb and compliant, they just pay a fine and not hunt and lose their gun. This is craziness. Anyway, I'll wrap it up.
Any more questions, Johnny?
No, Steve, thanks for your time, man.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
You bet.
Thanks so much. Where can people find more of your stuff or get connected with what you're doing?
Yeah, so we're on Facebook. I think it's like 61,000 followers on Facebook. It's Steve Porter's Trophy Whitetail on Facebook. And my website is porterwhitetail.com.
Best of luck, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you later.
Here's what's next on the HUNTXP podcast.
If the habitat conditions are good, wolves can't keep up with that. And we saw that. We saw that in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Like, you got this highly productive landscape where deer numbers are just booming. And our wolf population at the same time was at its highest point. So the wolf population is probably somewhat reflective of how many deer are out there. And eventually there's going to be some of this cycling happening where deer numbers boom, wolf numbers kind of follow it up, deer numbers tank, wolf numbers are kind of following it down. But if that habitat isn't there to support that rebound in deer numbers, they're just going to kind of plateau. And so it gets pretty complicated. And I think it's sometimes it's just equated to wolves versus deer. Yeah, and that's just not the reality of it. It's more complicated than that.
Hey there, thanks for watching this video. I'm JD, founder and crew member of the HUNTXP team. We're so grateful that you took time to watch this video, and hopefully it's helping you level up your hunting game. That's what we in our community is all about, and we want to invite you into this growing community of hunters that's all about leveling up each other's hunting game. So the first thing you can do is like and subscribe, but even more than that, we got some fun things going on over at our website, huntxp.com. We'd love for you to join our community there and stay connected with what we're doing, what we're working on, and we'd love to hear about what you're after. So thank you for watching this video. We'll see you next time.
What's up, HUNTXPers? Quick request for you. Would you go ahead and rate our podcast on Spotify or wherever you're listening to this podcast? It is a huge help to our community that we're trying to grow. We want more and more people to have fun with us on this podcast, connect with us over on the website, start using Crockett, all these other things, but people don't know about it until the algorithm kind of starts to push it to people who it would be meaningful for. So you could help out with that. If you've been loving what we're up to, if you love this episode you're listening to, give us 5 stars if you could. It's a huge help to us. Spotify, whatever you're listening to us on, go ahead and rate it so more people can join the crazy train. Thanks.